Okay, so if that's confusing to you, a helpful subtitle of the talk would be what political consultants don't want their donors to know. So I know a lot of people here work on campaigns, and a lot of people who are working on campaigns, especially around elections, they're obsessing about how to gather more and more personal data about voters, about their behavior, about how to use this data to customize messaging on more and more granular levels, okay? But a lot of these same people seem either unaware of, or perhaps they're ignoring, a growing body of social science research, some of which Sasha referred to before, that clearly indicates what matters the most in elections. And not what matters most by a little bit more than another thing, but what matters most by far in elections in terms of moving voters to the polls. And that's the extent, it's not the message itself, it's the extent to which the tactics we use to deliver that message are personal. And by personal, I mean person to person, or in person, I mean people. So this, as long as we're going to talk about the power of the personal in politics, this is me, and I want to tell you a little bit about where I come from. The first election that I cared passionately about was in 1976. I was 6. Can't really tell here, but I'm wearing a campaign button in that portrait. Whoops. And that's the button that's right there. Oops, having a little bit trouble with that. Okay, so that's the button right there. So I loved Trix when I was 6. It was my favorite cereal, and in the commercials there was this rabbit who always wanted to get to eat Trix, but it was never allowed to eat Trix because the commercial said Trix was for kids. But in 1976, the people behind Trix decided to hold an election. Should we let the rabbit eat Trix? So I mailed in my box tops. Okay, I voted yes. I got this button in the mail, all right? And I wore it. I was a fierce partisan. I wore it in my portrait when it was taken at Kmart, okay? And we won that election, okay? Kids like me who ate Trix, we voted overwhelmingly to let the rabbit eat our 46% sugar, fruity flavored corn puffs. And it was my very first win, so it was quite meaningful to me. Okay, so fast forward a couple decades, and now I'm the political director at Credo, and I'm the president of Credo Super PAC, but as a progressive who's involved in elections, my record is much less good than it was when I was 6, which is why now I use social science research to power the work that we do at Credo instead of Trix, the 46% sugar. What does this look like to power a campaign with social science research, right? Not with gut, not with trend, not with what makes us the most money, but with social science research. Well, in 2012, Credo helped defeat 5 out of 11 Tea Party Republicans that we targeted in the House of Representatives. And because we didn't have as much money as the other guys, we needed to know how we could make the biggest impact with the lowest cost. So we looked to social science for this. And what this told us was that we needed to run asymmetrical, volunteer-driven field campaigns. So in each one of these districts, we ran congressional-scale field campaigns powered by volunteers. And in most of the districts, just to give you a sense of this, our grassroots field campaigns were bigger than the campaigns of the Democratic challengers. What did this look like? Almost 70,000 people donated. We had over 3,200 volunteers. We knocked on over 100,000 doors, and we made over 1 million phone calls. Now, our biggest regret was out of the 5 Tea Party Republicans that we defeated, one of them was not Michelle Bachmann. She squeaked by with just over 4,000 votes, which was why last month in April, we announced that we were going to spend $500,000 to help local volunteers in her district organize to defeat her with a massive grassroots field campaign. Okay. So I have, yes, let's just take a moment and appreciate the end of Michelle Bachmann's congressional career. So I have no doubt that the narrow margin in 2012, and then also the threat of a massive grassroots field campaign to defeat Michelle Obama, had an impact on her decision. Michelle Bachmann. Wrong Michelle. Michelle Bachmann had an impact on her decision not to run again amidst the ongoing ethics investigations. Okay, so back to the formula that we put up before. We know that campaign tactics works from the science to the extent that they are personal. And so if you take people armed with truth to the exponential function of passion times data plus tactics, then you can beat the money and the consultants and the TV ads. Okay, now there's a lot of hype out there about A/B testing, data, social, and how this can impact the outcome of elections. And if you listen to the media and you read the media stories, unless you're reading someone like Sasha, then you would believe that you could win an election by remote control if only you had enough geeks on staff. But there's not very much hype about a growing scientific consensus that what really impacts elections and what could really win elections is simply this, is that tactics that are personal in terms of how they deliver messages, that has the biggest impact by far in elections. And if you use personal tactics and you use people to deliver messages, that you can actually beat the big money campaigns that are often corporate funded that we often find ourselves up against in politics. That means we can put elections back into the hands of the people. We can do it using math. We can do it using personal and passionate techniques. What we have to remember is to be personal and to be passionate, it requires people. So we can use math to win elections, but at the heart of the equation, we have to have people, or else the math is not going to add up. So let's go to the right side of the equation, money and consultants and broadcast television ads. There is ample research that shows that the effect of television ads in election campaigns, it's fleeting at most. And so when you make a broadcast ad buy, no matter how targeted for an attack ad, you've got the worst return on investment of virtually anything that you could do in the electoral space. And it's not that ads don't work at all. It's just that the impact of a television ad or any kind of broadcast ad, maybe it's in the digital mode, it's so fleeting, it decays so fast, it's only effective right before someone votes. But we have a lot of people for whom it's either fashionable or lucrative to press television ads or mailers or robocalls, techniques that none of the scientific experiments have shown to have a major impact on elections. So what you have is you have the massive amount of money, most of it spent in our political election system, is being spent on techniques that haven't been proven to work. How do we know these haven't been proven to work? Well, we started using the protocols for drug trials to help us learn what works and doesn't work in elections. So in a randomized control trial, you take a universe of voters, you randomize them. You divide it into two groups, a treatment and a control. You show to the treatment television ads, you show to the control no television ads. All right? Then we can analyze the polling or we can analyze the voting files after the election. And what do we find? We find that there's a tiny or else a fleeting effect, if any, of the effect of television ads. These are things that we can know if we just use the science to tell us how to spend our money. Again, it's not that ads don't work ever, but the only instance in which scientific experiments have shown ads to have a considerable effect on the election are situations in which broadcast ads, we spend massively on them, and we do it immediately before an election. Because the effect decays so fast, you know, even if you show an ad a week before the election, the effect is going to be next to nothing. It has to be within about 3 days before the election. So money plus consultants plus TV, it does work in some situations. What is that? What is like sort of the more guaranteed effect of spending money this way? Well, summer houses for political consultants. Now that's in winning election years, and if you're in a losing cycle, you might just get a boat. So we have seen that. It's anecdotal, but we've seen it. All right, let's go to the other side of the equation, which is people armed with truth to the exponential function of passion times data and tactics. Okay, so the gold standard in this realm where we understand what works, it's a personal, direct approach from a person, an actual person, not an email from a person, to a voter. And we've conducted randomized control trials in this where you have a universe of voters. We randomize them again. Some of them get a knock on the door from a volunteer. Some of them don't get a knock on a door from a volunteer to talk about the election. When we analyze the voter files here, we find that you can get up to a double-digit turnout effect from a person knocking on a door, a volunteer talking to a voter. So the science tells us what we can do to have a big impact on elections, but only some of us are doing it. Now this gets me to something that was a key to what Credo Super PAC did in 2012, right? So this is the far left side of the equation. People armed with truth, motivated by passion to an exponential effect. And by people, I do a lot of online to offline campaigning, but I really just want to say by people, I mean people, actually showing up somewhere, people. These are volunteers who knocked on doors and made phone calls to defeat Alan West in 2012. I mean people. And what do I mean armed with truth? Okay? So this gets to this message point. Again, how a message is delivered in an election context matters far more than what that message is. This is, I'm proud to say, this is former Congressman Joe Walsh. And these were some of the messages that our volunteers carried. And this was the message that they felt was the truth about the candidate. And they went out there with that truth and they delivered it. And they knocked on more doors because that's what they were saying. This is one of our volunteers in Chip Kravak's district. He was out of Duluth. He was enraged by the fact that Chip Cravat voted to redefine rape in the House of Representatives. And he believed rape is rape. And this is what motivated him to go out. He was a high schooler, to go out and knock on door upon door. He knocked on hundreds and hundreds of doors. And this is the leverage that you get by the exponential function of passion when you add it to the left side of the equation. The people that make it the personal contacts that we know have the impacts in an election. But we also have to have data, and we have to have targeting. So we have to make sure that the people and what their passion is behind is a data-informed tactic. And so we don't want to go visit the houses of people that are going to vote whether we talk to them or not. We also don't want to visit the houses of people that are never going to vote no matter what we say to them. And also, if we don't have data informing what we're doing, we could go visit the houses of people and deliver our message, and they could be more likely to vote for the other side. So data is really important. And then tactics, so data times tactics. We know some tactics work better than others, even in this realm of the personal. There are a couple of political scientists named Don Green and Alan Gerber, and they've done a lot of these randomized control experiments in the field. And some of their experiments, they've determined, going door to door, you can generate as much as 1 additional vote per 14 people contacted. I mean, that's a lot, right? Going door to door with a volunteer. This is the gold standard of tactics. So when you look at our formula and you want to put in tactics, the #1 tactic you can do is have a volunteer going door to door talking to a voter. The next one is also personal contact. This is a volunteer phone bank. They found that volunteers talking on the phone to targeted voters can generate 1 additional vote per 38 people contacted in some races. So volunteers talking on the phone to voters. This is a personal contact. This is something if you put money into, you know what it will result. Compare that with a commercial phone bank. In elections have been shown 1 additional voter per 180 people contacted. So you see the decay between the more personal of a volunteer talking to a voter and a paid telemarketer talking to a voter. But it still works because at least it's personal. And if we compare that to direct mail, or we compare that to robocalls, or even compare it to digital display, where we don't have hardly any evidence that shows that it makes any impact in elections. Now, what else do we not know about? Broadcast television ads. Attack ads on broadcast television. We don't have any idea, with the exception of within a few days before a voter votes, if this has any impact on the election. And it doesn't matter if you target these broadcast ads through tiny cable clusters, right? You're always being sold tiny cable clusters, right, where you'll just really get to the voters that you need. Same goes for search, same goes for Facebook in terms of using display or broadcast techniques to try and move in voters. There's no evidence that this makes a difference, and yet we're spending millions of dollars on it. Super PACs alone spent over $500 million, the vast majority of it on negative attack ads that went on broadcast TV in the last cycle. The vast majority of that money didn't affect the outcome of the election. Credo Super PAC, we spent $3 million, and we know almost all of it had an impact on the election because all that money went into running a volunteer machine where we had people at the door, people on the phone, talking to voters to drive them to turn out in elections that we cared about. So I want to talk really briefly about what the exponential impact of passion is, okay? So we have passion as an exponential impact in our formula. When you have y equals e to the x, when you increase x, and for us x is passion, that speeds the increase of y. And that's how you get this lovely hockey stick graphic that's behind me. And this is what we're looking for in elections. How can we get that hockey stick when we're trying to get people involved, we're trying to maximize the number of people contacting voters so that we can have an impact on the outcome of the election? Now, in my world, we talk a lot about data, we talk about targeting, we talk about social, we talk about A/B testing, and those are all good things, but those things don't win elections. What wins elections is getting people in a room like this. It's these people. It's these people armed with the truth, leveraging the exponential impact of passion in their work, and using that to drive the tactics that we know work and that are informed by the data. And that's how we can use people to beat the big money campaigns that are not backed by science, that use broadcast ads and an enormous amount of money and haven't been proved to win elections. This is how Credo plans to put our efforts and our money in coming election cycles and fights. And if you want to answer Taryn's call to action about looking to science and trying to figure out if you're really making an impact and are you making an impact, I suggest that you do too.